our friend Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up show. He's been on the show. I think this is his third time. So welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Appreciate you all having me and excited for the game this weekend. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So we were just talking a little bit about South Carolina, 2-3 in the season right now. They are 2-point favorites right now against the Gators. But Chris, from a high level perspective, what can Gator fans expect out of South Carolina?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because I think Gamecock fans are wondering also what they can expect coming out of the bye week because, it's been a team. You look at the record, it's ugly, but you look at the 3 losses all coming to ranked opponents this point in the season. Obviously, the season opener against North Carolina, you go to Athens and lose to Georgia, and then, of course, that loss to Tennessee just about a week and a half or so ago. So, 3 losses you look at, and there's no shame in losing those 3 games, but 2 of the 3, it's really how you lost. UNC was the 9-sack game, an embarrassing performance on the offensive line. Defensively, you couldn't pressure Drake May. You could not stop the passing game at all. And then against Tennessee, Georgia was respectable, right? You're up 14-3 at half. Georgia outscored you 21-0 that second half, and they win the ball game. But then against Tennessee, defensively, it's been really, really leaky. Tennessee able to get the run game going, over 230 yards in that ball game. Joe Milton hit some big plays in that one, and Tennessee really ran away with that football game in a revenge type of game at Neyland Stadium. But I would say what Gator fans can expect, it's a lot of Spencer Rattler. It's a lot of aerial attack. And then for South Carolina, and I think Gator fans will agree that the key is going to be, and maybe the biggest matchup of this game, is the Florida rushing attack with Trevor Etienne, Montrell Johnson, that stable of backs that the Gators have, against Clayton White and that South Carolina rushing defense. And also South Carolina just defensively as a whole. You look at most of the major statistics, most of the major categories, South Carolina is near the bottom. So, guys, again, it really is somewhat of a mystery because Carolina, it's been a mixed bag. And, of course, it's been a mixed bag over the first 2 years of Shane Beamer. It's been a mixed bag in this series, right? We all remember 2021. The Gamecocks come off a bye week similar to this scenario. They win in dominating fashion. That was the Jason Brown at quarterback game and the Jabari Ellis scoop and score. And that one obviously got away from Florida, the end of the Dan Mullen era. And then last year, of course, Florida got their revenge in a big way in that 38-6 victory, which was a game that, was somewhat stunning, I would say, when you factor in just what Florida was last year. And then obviously what South Carolina went on to do, beating Tennessee, beating Clemson. So I look at this game, guys, as truly a 50-50 coin flip type of game. I know Florida, you guys were just talking about it, has been abysmal on the road. South Carolina has been a different team at home. And this is a year, guys, in the SEC, I'm sure you can attest, it feels like home field advantage. It's always meant a lot, but it feels like it means even more this year just because some of these teams are such on even footing. So, we'll see if that's the case again, but I really do look at this game as a 50-50 toss-up kind of game, and it's, again, a Gamecocks football team that's going to rely on the passing attack and rely on its offensive attack and just hopes it gets just enough out of its defense to squeak out a victory.
What is it with the offensive line? My buddy Taylor, who you know well, often bemoans the offensive line there at South Carolina. Is it because they're young and inexperienced? Is it just this is the best 5 that they have on campus? What's going on with the offensive line?
Well, Dan, both are true. They are young and inexperienced, and I would say right now the 5 they're going to roll out there against Florida, that's probably the 5 best they have available right now because start of the season, right? And, of course, we all talk transfer portal, how big of a deal that is. In college football, South Carolina lost 3 starters from a group a season ago that already was not great rushing the football, right? Kind of came along as the season went, but you looked at the overall numbers, finished outside of the top 100 in rushing offense. So they lost guys like Jovan Gwynn, who was a second-team All-SEC guy. They lost Eric Douglas. They lost Dylan Wanham. And these guys, they weren't great pieces, but they were veteran guys who had played a lot of meaningful snaps for South Carolina. So you returned 50 less starts, Dan, than you had a season ago. And you went to the transfer portal and tried to replace those guys. And with all due respect, transfers from places like Western Illinois, Mercer, Charlotte, Yale, if you will, which to all respect, the Yale transfer, Nick Gargiulo, has turned out pretty well. And he's a starter for you at the guard position. But they had some guys out there week 1, guys that simply put just aren't SEC football players. I don't know how else to say it or sugarcoat it or what have you, but it's just the truth. They just weren't SEC football players. And South Carolina has done a great job in recruiting under Shane Beamer in regards to the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage. Shane Beamer obviously knows very well that that's what it takes to win. You got to win in the trenches in the SEC to win at a significant level. And so they've got guys the Gators will see like Big Tree Babalade at the tackle spot. They've got Jatavius Shivers, you may see. Marquis Anderson, unfortunately, out for the season with an injury, but he's also another young guy they added. Trovon Bowe is a guy the Gators will see at the guard position. There's a good chance South Carolina is going to be starting 2 freshmen on the offensive line on Saturday, just like they were against Tennessee. And it's because, guys, while they may be youngsters, they may be two true freshmen. Those are positions you don't necessarily want to be in starting those guys. They're 2 of your most talented players, and they've graded out that way, too, when they've played. So, it's a group that lacks experience, that is very young for sure. But, they're rolling out their best 5 right now. But unfortunately, right now, the best 5, it's somewhat of a bleak situation. And you're just having a couple guys out there that's baptism by fire for some of those youngsters, and they're learning on the go. And you're just hoping as a Gamecock fan that, say, this is the week that it clicks, or that light bulb moment happens sooner rather than later, because the pieces are there offensively to be pretty productive. But you guys know if you don't have it in the trenches, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Tilt.
What are you chalking the lack of run game up to? Just inexperience in offensive line? Same thing?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of inexperience in the offensive line and the running back room. South Carolina, they did find something over the last couple of weeks, I'll say, with Mario Anderson, the Division II transfer from Newberry College. And, he's a guy that, maybe you look at and say he doesn't have top-end SEC talent or speed or this, that, or whatever, but he does run with an edge. He runs with a bad attitude, which I say is a great compliment to give a running back. He's a guy that does not go down at first contact, and someone that at least gives South Carolina the threat of a running game. But, guys, this is another position where, the Gamecocks lost Marshawn Lloyd, the transfer portal, went to Southern Cal. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but he's balling out right now for the Trojans. He's doing pretty well for them. And the Gamecocks, for sure. I mean, he's doing well. And for whatever reason, guys, the Gamecocks just were not able to go out and get a proven Power 5 or, any type of running back that could really help them in this room. Again, they picked up Mario Anderson, all due respect. Division II transfer. They added Dontavius Braswell, a true freshman. And outside of that, they returned Juju McDowell and then De'Carrion Joyner, who entered the season as RB1. He's been a guy who's played quarterback, played, wide receiver. They thought they'd slide him over to running back. And, it was a great story in the preseason, guys, but it's just been proven through 5 games that he's just not a running back. It's just flat out. So Mario Anderson gives them the best threat of a running game there. Had over 100 yards against Tennessee. Granted, 75 of that was on one run. But I would say, man, it's a combination of the two. You have a bad offensive line. I mean, even a really good running back, I think, would struggle to run behind that offensive line. But also, too, like it's been a running back by committee and searching for that true RB1 the first 5 games of the season. And the good news is the Gamecocks feel like they have that guy now in Mario Anderson.
That can also explain some of the sack numbers if you're making yourself one-dimensional just because you can't run the ball. I wanted to ask about Xavier. Is it Legette?
Yeah, Legette. Yeah,
Legette. Is he one of the most surprising stories early on here?
Absolutely, Nick. No doubt. He's a guy that, I think on 2 or 3 separate occasions in different preseasons coming into seasons, like I've labeled him my breakout player. Like this is a guy to watch for. He could break out and be wide receiver 2 or maybe even wide receiver 1. And for whatever reason, it just never happened, right? He never lived up to the potential. And, I was just talking about guys, that light bulb moment, every player, whatever profession it's in, whether you're an athlete, you're in business, you're a podcaster, you're, whatever it is you're doing, we all have that light bulb moment where it just clicks and you get into a groove, get into a rhythm, and you sort of hit your stride. And I think for some guys that comes their freshman year, for some guys that comes their senior year, and for some guys it never comes. But for Xavier Legette, guys, I think last year the kickoff return for a touchdown that he had to open up the Texas A&M game at Williams-Brice Stadium, I think for him that was sort of the light bulb moment where it just kind of all started clicking. And, of course, closed out the season in a big way, had a big performance against Notre Dame, and Justin Stepp, the wide receivers coach, and even Shane Beamer had talked about they had never seen a wide receiver have as good a summer and off season as this guy had. But, of course, right, that was off-season chatter. So to see him put it all together, though, and he's already surpassed his career total in receiving yards through 5 games. He did that a couple of games ago. So that just goes to show you how good of a season he's having. And, they've got to find something else, right? Because Juice Wells obviously out with an injury. I think we'll get more information on Juice tomorrow from Shane Beamer. But, guys, I'd be surprised if he goes in the game. I really would. It's a serious foot injury that he's trying to come back from. And so I'm not holding my breath or anything, expecting Juice to play on Saturday. But no, Xavier Legette has been a massive surprise, guys. We all felt like he had the potential. We all felt like it was in there, like he was capable of this. But even the most optimistic of us, I thought he could be a 500 or 600 yard guy, and Juice Wells would be the leading, 1,000-yard receiver, what have you. So to see what Xavier Legette is doing through 5 weeks has been absolutely incredible. And now the biggest priority for the offense, you have 17. You got to find somebody else to help out he and Spencer Rattler.
looking through here, Spencer Rattler, 119 for 163, 73% completion percentage, 8.7. But probably the biggest thing that sticks out to me is 22 sacks on the season, coupled with rushing. It seems like when he's able to throw and has time to throw, that he's been pretty efficient. And obviously a lot of those yards have gone to Xavier Legette. Have a lot of those passes been in the pocket? Have they been on the move? I know Spencer Rattler is, I guess, technically a dual threat, but what's most of the passing from Spencer been looking like?
Yeah, Dan, I would say this. I'm to a point where anytime I see Spencer Rattler set his feet, I expect really good things to happen. Like there have been few times this year where I've seen a Spencer Rattler set his feet and deliver a throw and it not be accurate, right? And we're talking about a guy that, I know it's firm and it's FCS competition, but he went 25 of 27. There's some quarterbacks out there that can't do that against air. And then you look at Mississippi State, he went 18 of 20. And again, not the greatest defense in the world, but still, that's an SEC defense he's carving up there. So the most impressive thing about Spencer Rattler, guys, and you look back at the Tennessee game, by the way, let's acknowledge that. I think, Nick pointed this out. I think one of the biggest reasons for those numbers, if you will, is South Carolina fell behind early. They lost any semblance of balance. Tennessee pinned their ears back and sent the pass rush. He was sacked 6 times. And so, he's trying to operate under duress on the road in a hostile environment, and things got kind of sideways. But all in all, guys, Spencer Rattler's been fantastic. I mean, this team is him. This team is 7, and this team will go as far as he takes them, truly. I don't see a scenario, guys, where, and I'm not trying to give the keys of the game or anything to Billy Napier and the boys, but it's like, I just don't see a scenario where South Carolina wins a football game this year if he does not play very well. I don't know if they can get away with him playing average. Like, I don't want to say they're a one-man team, but they're as close to it as you can get, right? This team is going to live and die with Spencer Rattler. But guys, the most impressive thing he's done, he's raised his floor, right? In my opinion, he's not making those bad decisions, those bad mistakes that he made a season ago. The decision-making has improved, and you could argue that it's improved because South Carolina went away from their offensive coordinator last year, and they've simplified some things, and they've made things much easier to execute, and you can see that. I think Spencer Rattler's playing much more free. He's playing much more loose. He's just going out there and playing ball, just playing pitch and catch with the boys. That's really what it looks like. But for him, I mean, he's great throwing on the run, obviously, guys. He's got incredible arm strength that's going to make him a top target in the NFL draft and a guy who's probably going to be taken in the first couple of rounds. But if you're the Gators, it's just about disrupting his flow, disrupting his rhythm, getting him outside of the pocket, putting him under duress because, it goes without saying that any quarterback is going to be better when they've got a clean pocket to operate with in 3 to 4 seconds to throw than when he's got guys breathing down his neck. And a lot of that comes down to, can South Carolina win first down and getting some 2nd and 5s and 3rd and 4s and some manageable situations where it's not so obvious they're going to have to pass the football. So, I would say, Dan, your best chance is obviously getting him outside of the pocket and moving. He's also used his legs very well this year. I think that's something that's been really, really underrated. If you go back and watch South Carolina, he's been able to run the football, get out of the pocket, keep some drives alive. But, despite all that, guys, whether teams have gotten pressure or not, even against North Carolina, he was sacked 9 times and went 30 of 39 for 350 yards. Like,
wow. Yeah.
What he's played out of this world at times. And I think South Carolina more than likely will need that type of performance yet again against Florida.
Silk, you're on mute.
Amateur hour over here, Chris. What's going on with your defense, man? It seems like you guys are like either not last or close to last in almost every statistic category. What's going on that side of the ball? I like to see that, bro. I need my offense being pedestrian, bro.
Yeah,
the numbers make my eyes and my heart perk up a little bit.
Silk's over there cheering on your defense.
Silk, you
think more.
No, listen, again, you guys are asking a lot of questions that Gamecock fans are also scratching their heads, wondering, and they're perplexed as well. And I just, guys, when I look at the defense, and admittedly, I was nervous about the defense coming into this season, and I see our guy Taylor chiming in. I know he's confused as well. But, I was concerned about the defense coming in. Like, I had South Carolina guys over the summer at 7-5. But even if you go look back at the scores, I thought it was going to be a lot of high-scoring games because, you look at what the Gamecocks lost, guys. And, you look at the production numbers, if you will, we can argue that. But South Carolina lost a former 5-star player in Jordan Birch off the edge. He transfers to Oregon. They lost Gilbert Edmond off the edge, who was a starter for them. He transferred to Florida State. You lost Zach Pickens in the middle. He's now playing with the Chicago Bears, by the way, right now. Big body in the interior defensive line. You lost 6 of your top 8 in regards to snap count, right, in your front 7. And then you lost 2 of your starting corners, Darius Rush and Cam Smith, who are both NFL guys. And then you look at who they picked up in the portal, guys. And again, a lot of Gamecock fans didn't understand why national pundits were low on South Carolina, or, we just beat Tennessee and Clemson. Why aren't they higher? The Gamecocks were gutted in the transfer portal. And I just don't know that they really picked up the impact pieces to fill the voids that they lost. Now, at the cornerback position, Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune have been okay. They've been serviceable. I don't know that they've really filled the shoes, those departed guys. You do have Nick Emanwari and DQ Smith in the back end, but those guys have even been exposed in some one-on-one matchups. You saw Mississippi State do that, and even Tennessee as well. And then up front, guys, South Carolina, it's just a tale as old as time. They can't stop the run. Had some glimmers of hope in that Georgia game. TJ Sanders flashing at the defensive tackle spot. Obviously, you have Tonka Hemingway back and Boogie Huntley. But, guys, they don't do much of anything well. And I hate to say that. And I think what's maddening is there's too much talent on that side of the football to see South Carolina struggle the way they are defensively. I mean, I don't think anybody came into this season thinking South Carolina was going to be top 3 or 4 in the SEC in defense, but to be 13th or 14th in most major categories, it's certainly turned up the heat on third-year defensive coordinator Clayton White, because it's the third year, guys, and you guys know how this feels. When you're in the second or third year of a coaching staff and you're making year one mistakes, that's when you start to lose people. Like that's when people really start to become irked, and I think that's what you're seeing them do. It's year 3 and they still can't stop the run. It's year 3 and they can't get off the field on third down. It's year 3 and they're still giving up the explosive plays. And now the secondary is leaky. And normally they've had that to lean on, and that's not really the case, guys. So, I think most in Garnet and Black think the upside of this defense is much higher than it is, but we just simply have not seen it play out yet. And give credit, by the way, to the schedule. You've played some real high-powered offenses, and the Gamecocks have suffered because of it. But I think this will be the real test against Florida. It's like, it's going to go one way or the other, right? Either you've had 2 weeks to prepare. If you can't slow down or stop this Florida offense that I know has had some struggles, had some troubles, Clayton White's seat is going to go from warm to scorching hot in a matter of one Saturday.
Yeah, just looking at Pro Football Focus here, all of your DBs rank pretty low. Jalen Kilgore is your highest ranked guy. Florida's offense is a lot of short and intermediate passes, a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage. What has been South Carolina's kind of Achilles heel on the defensive backs? Has it been in giving up the big play deep? Has it been in just not as much talent as the teams that you guys are facing? I mean, you guys are turning the ball over quite a bit. I think you have 6 interceptions on the season, 3 fumble recoveries. But what's been why coverage has been so low for South Carolina in terms of Pro Football Focus scoring and obviously giving up a lot of points?
Yeah, Dan, and to your point, Jelon Kilgore is a true freshman. So you could argue the defensive back that has played the best thus far this year is a true freshman for South Carolina, if that tells you anything. But, guys, I think you have to start up front. I think the Gamecocks have not had a consistent pass rush. And, again, I mean, the quarterbacks they've played, Drake May, Carson Beck, Will Rogers, I mean, even Joe Milton, and he wasn't great against South Carolina, but these are dudes that if you give them time to throw, they're going to pick you apart. And that's typically what has happened. I think it's been more guys in the secondary. I think it's been the explosives over the top. You saw that against Mississippi State. I mean, again, Will Rogers, Tulu Griffin, it was an absolute field day. Joe Milton hit some big ones down the stretch as well. But that's been, guys, why there's been so many gripes is you feel like South Carolina, especially against Tennessee, it's a lot of off coverage, playing really soft and just kind of giving up that underneath, almost playing this bend but don't break defense. And unfortunately, you are breaking in years past, or maybe you're getting the big turnover, or you're getting the big play. I mean, guys, you look back at South Carolina over the last couple of years, and I mean, it's been a rarity they've held teams to under 30 points. Like, I think the Gamecocks struggling somewhat defensively. It's not really anything new, but the first 2 years of Shane Beamer, they've been able to mask it with turnovers, right? And opportunistic defense. And, nobody's saying that, you don't want to say it's smoke and mirrors because you get coached up on this stuff and right place, right time. You make the big play, if you will, but it has masked a lot of issues, I think. So I think it starts up front, guys. You just have not been able to get a consistent pass rush. I think the edge position, especially for South Carolina, it's an eyesore. I think this is an SEC defensive line that is near the bottom of the SEC, if you want my honest opinion. And then the secondary, like I mentioned, is you've been breaking in some new guys. So I think there's more talent than what those numbers reflect in the secondary. I think also when you give up 487 passing yards in one game, like you did against Mississippi State, it can skew the numbers just a little bit. But, if I'm the Gators, I'm attacking the secondary in all kinds of ways, and I'm definitely taking some vertical shots with guys like Ricky Pearsall and the other weapons that Florida has. So, again, this is a put up or shut up week for South Carolina defensively, guys, because with all due respect to Florida, it's not like you're facing the number one offense in the SEC. And if you let the Gators gash you, again, there's going to be a lot of chatter in Columbia. But for the secondary, take away the big play, keep everything underneath. If you can do that, I think you give yourself a chance.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that this is a game where I think you can throw a lot of the stats out the window just because Florida is, I think, 1-7 under Billy Napier in away games. That team has really struggled away. Intensity, they've gotten blown out a number of times, even if the score didn't look like it. So obviously it is a different game, whether it's home or away for Florida. I think that Gator fans are very confident in home games, against most opponents, and very skeptical, as you can see in the comments, about any away game until that can be proven otherwise. So Chris, before we get you out of here, let's get your prediction. Right now we have South Carolina as 2-point favorites in this game. The over under is 53.5. So what do you have for a prediction for this game?
Yeah, Dan, you put me on the spot because normally I don't lock these in later in the week. I mean, I will say that I'm leaning South Carolina, and right now, just top ahead score, I'd probably go 27-24 Gamecocks. I do think this is a coin flip game. I think it could go either way. I identified this back in July as the most important game of the 2023 season for South Carolina, and I got some pushback on that. But the way I looked at it, I expected a 2-3 start. I thought the Gamecocks would be 2-3 going into bye week, and this Florida game really served as, the game that if you want any chance at reaching any of your preseason expectations or goals, or AKA getting to 7 or 8 wins, like this is the game South Carolina has to have at home. And I also, guys, look at SEC East hierarchy and SEC hierarchy. And of course, I think it was maybe overblown a little bit how much of a mess Florida was during the summer. I feel like the Gators were kind of the fun team to pick on for whatever reason, but
for clicks, man.
Yeah.
We get the numbers booming, bro.
Graham Mertz ranked 14th in a couple of the SEC quarterback rankings. I know coming into the season, Gators ranked at the bottom of the SEC power rankings. It was all over the place. But, this is still a game where I look at South Carolina. It's similar to where the Gamecocks went to Neyland. It was the revenge factor for Tennessee. They got embarrassed by South Carolina. Like, this is sort of a revenge spot for the Gamecocks as well. 38-6 last year in the Swamp. 0 offensive points. You have to think this is a team that's going to be licking their chops to prove that game was a fluke. And when you look at the SEC East hierarchy, guys, this is as gettable, in my opinion, as Florida is going to get. Now, I know Gator fans have mixed opinions on Billy Napier, but you look at the way they're recruiting. I think Florida's going to be back sooner rather than later if Gator fans can give Billy Napier time and Florida can survive the most daunting schedule probably in college ball history next season. With that being said, if you're South Carolina, again, this is just a game you have to have for the prospects of this season, for the growth, I think, of your program under Shane Beamer and continuing that upward trajectory. So I think South Carolina, guys, at home, I will be picking them more than likely to get the job done. I just think home field, guys, it makes so much of a difference, especially this year in the SEC. But I think this is a game that comes right down to the wire. And really, you could tell me any result, and it would not surprise me at the end of the day. So I'll go Gamecocks 27-24 right now with the prediction subject to change. But I do think home field is a big factor in this one.
Yeah, we've got 2 comments here. Our mutual friend Taylor, I think the stats about the Gamecocks coming off a bye week with Shane and being at home is the only thing giving him somewhat confidence as a Gamecock. And then our friend Chris Sorley here said the good news for your Gamecocks is that Florida doesn't show up on the road, so South Carolina will look like Georgia against them. LOL, see you at the game. Well, Chris, it's always great to have you on, my friend. You do a great show and everything else. So let everybody know where they can follow, listen in on South Carolina. So plug everywhere people can find you. We appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, Dan, Silk, Nick, I appreciate you guys having me on. And by the way, to Taylor's stat, Gamecocks 14-2 coming off the bye week since 2009, 2-0 under Shane Beamer. And, of course, one of those wins was against Florida back in 2021. So we'll see if history repeats itself. But no, yeah, guys, I appreciate you having me on at the Spurs Up Show on X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, wherever you get content, we are there. Of course, we host a daily live show called The Daily Crow, which airs exclusively on YouTube, noon to 2. We take questions, comments, calls every Friday in our Friday mailbag segment. And all week, of course, we have special guests on. We actually have 2 Gators on during the week. We have Chris Doring on Mondays, which is a blast of SEC Network. And then Thursdays, we have my good friend Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate, which is a radio show, and he is a Florida grad. So there's some Florida favor. And I don't know, there's a weird connection with Florida and South Carolina, man, from the Spurrier days and Muschamp, unfortunately, and some other things as well. But no, yeah, we do that daily live show. Podcast drops every single day. iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And we've also got merchandise as well over at tsus.store. So we're kind of all over the place. Wherever you can find the Spurs Up show, you can find us there. But always a pleasure, guys. I appreciate you and looking forward to a great game on Saturday.
Hey, Chris, you guys like our old coaches. So if Beamer don't work out, Mullen is available.
I was just hoping we didn't hire Jim McElwain. That I would have quit. I'd have hung it up. I would have hung it up. I would have hung it up.
I almost hung it up.
There was a lot of lying that we were doing at that time. About
a lot about loafers and all, man. It was egregious, man. It's crazy. No socks. Shameful.
Oh, man.
The shark photo. Who could ever forget?
Who could ever
I was hoping it was him.
Awesome. Well,